Welcome back, students in third grade. In the English section, we will complete chapter 4 in the marketing research course about the exploratory research design secondary data. We divided this chapter for part 1 and part 2. We discuss part 1 in the last lecture and we will complete part 2 in this lecture. In the last lecture, we differentiate between the primary data and the secondary data. We discuss some advantage and disadvantage for the secondary data. When collecting the secondary data, the researcher should evaluate the secondary data. There are some criteria for the evaluation of the secondary data, like specification, error, currency, objectives, nature, dependability. And the secondary data divided to internal and external secondary data. These two definitions to differentiate the internal data of the external data. We reach for this point of chapter 4 and this is the first point in part 2 in this chapter. The published data of the external secondary data have two classifications: the general business sources and the government sources. The general business sources like guides, directors, statistical data, indices, and the governmental sources like the census data and the other government publications. The published external data like the guides, the guides are an excellent sources of standard of recurring information and helpful in identifying other important sources of directories, trade associations, and trade publications. One of the first sources a researcher should consult the directories are helpful for identifying individuals or organizations that collect specific data, like consultants and consulting organization directory. Some associations like FINDEX, the directory of market research reports, the directories like studies and surveys and research services directory, the indices are helpful in locating information on a particular topic in several different publications. Sorry. There are classification for the computerized database. The computerized database may be online, internet, offline. The online databases are bases stored in computers that require a telecommunication network to access, but the internal databases can be accessed, searched, and analyzed on the internet. It's possible to download data from the internet and store in the computer or an auxiliary storage device, but the offline database are databases that are available on diskette or CD-ROM. We have the classification of the computerized data. Another classification, the bibliographic databases are composed of citations to articles in journals, magazines, newspaper, marketing research studies, technical reports, government documents, and the like. All these data are external secondary data, can be obtained from journals, from magazines, from newspaper, or the marketing research studies. And we have the numeric database, contain numerical and statistical information that may be important sources of the secondary data. And the full text database contain the complete text of the source documents comprising the database. And the directory databases provides information on individuals, organizations, and services. We have a type of sources introduced by some firms called the syndicated firms. The syndicated source of the secondary data or the syndicated services are information services offered by marketing research organizations that provide information from a common database to different firms that describe to their service. These syndicated service or syndicated firms are very important for the marketing research secondary data. These companies collect and sell common pools of data of non-commercial value designed to serve a number of clients. The syndicated sources can be classified based on the unit of measurement. We can classify the syndicated sources for two classification, the households or consumers or institutions. These syndicated firms can give the market research external information about the whole households or the consumers or about some institutions in the marketplace. Households or consumer data may be obtained from some surveys or daily banners or electronic scanner services, and the institutional data may be obtained from retailers, wholesalers, or industrial firms. The units of measurement for these syndicated services can be classified for two classification, the households, consumers, or the institution. In the households or the consumers, we can take the syndicated information or syndicated service by the surveys, by panels, by electric scanner service. In the electric scanner service, we have the volume tracking data, the scanner dairy panels, and the scanner dairy panels with cable TV. But the panels information may collect from purchase or the media, and the surveys data collected by the psychographic and lifestyle, the general and advertising evaluation. Second classification of the syndicated service is the institutions. I can collect some data and information about the institutions by the retailer, wholesaler, or some industrial firms like the direct inquiries, clipping services, or corporate reports. This table shows an overview of the syndicated service. included the classification that we discussed, maybe by the surveys, the dairy purchase panels or the dairy media panels, and by some external panels or dairy information. Every information have characteristics, advantage and disadvantage, and some uses. We have a combining information for different sources. These sources may be single source data. It can provide integrated information on households or variables including media consumption and purchases and marketing variables, such as product sales price or advertising, promotion and in-store marketing effort. Then we have an important classification of the international sources. The international marketing research, a wide variety of secondary data are available for the international marketing research. As in a case of domestic research, the problem is not one of lack of data, but on the information available, and it's useful to classify the various sources. The secondary information or the secondary international data are available from domestic government and non-governmental sources, like this figure. In this figure, the international secondary data may be from the domestic organizations or the international organizations or the organizations in foreign countries. The most important government sources are the Department of Commerce, the Agency for International Development, the Small Business Administration, like the Export-Import Bank of the United States. These international secondary data we can obtain from some websites. So in this chapter, in contrast to primary data, which originate with the researcher for the specific purpose for problem at hand, the secondary data are data originally collected for other purposes. These secondary data can be obtained quickly and are relatively inexpensive. However, they have limitations and should be carefully evaluated to determine their appropriateness by some criteria. For this evaluation, a width of information exists in the organization for which the researcher is being conducted. This information consists internal secondary data. The external data are generated by sources outside the organization. These data exists in the form of published or printed material online internal and offline database or information made available by some syndicated firms. And the syndicated services or sources are companies that collect and sell common pools of data designed to serve a number of clients. The syndicated service can be classified based on the unit of measurement. The households or consumer data may be obtained via services, purchase and media panels, or some electronic scanner service. When institutions are the units of measurement, the data may be obtained from retailers, wholesalers, or industrial firms. These are several specialized sources of secondary data useful for conducting international marketing research. However, the evaluation of these secondary data becomes more critical as the usefulness of accuracy of these data. We have some key terms and concepts in the reference, and there are suggested cases and video cases. In studying this chapter, you should revise your reference to be involved and collected all the data in this chapter. And in this point, we end chapter 4. Thank you, my dear students. See you soon.